You got to have a great story. But then you got to think about, like, how do we actually make it interesting beyond that? Like, how do we maybe flip things on its head, maybe surprise people, make them laugh, make them think, right? These are ways that you can really start to take what seems like maybe a boring message, right? It's like, how many different accounting firms really just kind of are saying the same thing, maybe with a little bit of nuance. But you can start to make it more interesting by just the way in which you approach the story itself.
You're listening to the Remarkabrand Podcast, where authentic brands win.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Remarkabrand Podcast. This is your co-host, Mike Jones, with my co-host,
Sam Pagel.
Yeah, and we're here to talk about more in this series that we've been doing, really about how to think about your marketing from an inside-out perspective. We've looked at kind of understanding your audience, creating your message. We've talked about channels and media, how to select those. And then today we're going to be talking about how do you make it all interesting. It's kind of like the creative side to your marketing process. And particularly, we're going to be talking to professional services firms, especially you accounting firms, because we love you. But before we do that, Sam, do you have a name 10 things little game for us?
I absolutely do, Mike. And this is a really fun one today because we're going to brainstorm 10 campaign slogans that might actually work for professional service firms. Okay? I should say 10 risky campaign slogans that might actually work for professional
All right. Well, I got to get it out of my system because you're counting on us.
Oh, that's good, Mike. That is risky, but that just might work. Okay.
I'm counting on it.
I'm going to go with the things you wish you knew before prison. That's a good one, you know.
White collar version.
Could apply to accounting, could apply to lawyers, you know. That could be a real good one.
Oh, man. Risky. Did we just say tax evasion?
Yeah, that's a good one.
All of our accounting firm friends are just like, oh, this is so stupid.
It is. But hey, there might be a gem in here. And,
there might be.
If you
see
steal
what
it,
number 10 is.
If you steal it, it'll be okay. I'm going to go with let's play a new game, Double Jeopardy. These are all like criminal-based ideas.
I want like an anti-Uncle Sam campaign.
Yeah.
Down with Sam.
Yeah. Down with
Dual
Sam.
purpose. You can also run it against you. It's great.
Yeah, I won't take it personally. I know that's just an idea.
It's just an idea.
It's just an idea. I won't take it personally. Let's go with I'm trying to think of like a cool, pricing one where it's like pay more for less. That could be interesting.
Pay more for less.
You pay your accountant more to pay less taxes. Boom, Mike. That's brilliant right there. Pay more for less.
Advising you since 2024.
Ooh. Little startup project you got going on there.
It's risky, but you know what? Might just work.
Okay, I think we got 3 more. Let's go with when numbers don't matter, we'll make it count.
We'll make it count. I like that. A whole campaign, everything's crayon drawings.
Yeah.
And we go, come on, it's not that hard.
That's good. Short playing the services that they offer. That's good. That's great. I like the crayon.
Your kid could do it, right?
Yeah.
Your kid could do your taxes.
That's foreshadowing because we're going to be talking about having a writer and a designer working together. So that could work really well.
That's how you do it. You get one kid who's really good at drawing, and you get another kid who actually can spell, and you're good. You're good to go.
I'm going to finish up here, Mike, with I think a revolutionary idea that we might start seeing in the industry more in professional services marketing, and that is homing pigeons. Okay. I'm picturing some kind of really cool scroll-like paper rolled up into a tiny little roll that just kind of shows up on your windowsill. So clients, make sure your windows are open. Make sure you get that spring breeze through the windows. And you never know if this, a homing pigeon might show up and deliver a really cool secret message from your accountant.
They're so bad. I love them.
I expect to see one or two of those pop up here or there in the industry.
Yep. I can't wait to see the swag that comes out of these.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Absolutely.
Little foam stress pigeons. You squeeze them.
Yeah.
Find your frequency.
All right. Enough of that. All right. We're going to jump into how to make your content interesting, how to make your campaigns, your marketing, really all of your marketing interesting. I think that's a very hot topic right now. Probably has been for a while, but especially for professional services firms, I think a lot of firms are known for being a little stodgy, maybe a little dusty. And so a lot of firms are working on trying to make their marketing, their content, all the things they're producing out in the marketplace, make them a little bit more interesting, a little bit more creative. How can we kind of push the envelope? While at the same time, I think this is the big trick, so many firms still want to remain building that professional kind of reputation, right? And obviously that makes sense. You're dealing with, on the accounting side, you're dealing with people's finances, their money, their taxes, their business. And, if you're talking about other professional services, you're dealing with legal risk, and you're dealing with, the performance of their business, the performance of their organization, if you're consulting around that. And so there is this need to remain professional while at the same time cutting through and really being interesting, which kind of is like the first part of this, I think, that we need to talk about, Sam, which is why even be interesting? Maybe it's just better to just stay stodgy and, buttoned up. Maybe that's the real answer here. What do you think?
Well, because it's easy to be boring, right?
Yep.
And especially nowadays with all these different tools coming out to help you in your content creation, ChatGPT is really good at being boring. Super duper good at being boring.
So true.
Every tool like that now is just built. I mean, it is what it is. It's spitting out other content that's probably also boring. So why is it important for your content to be interesting? Well, I guess there's a question there of, do you actually want people to read or view or listen to the content you're creating? Or are you just trying to fill a void? You're just filling empty space with stuff.
Well, I know, Sam, for me, I produce content because there is a void in my life and I need to fill it. So I appreciate you making that point. I needed to hear that.
That's why we're here, right, Mike?
That's why we're here. That's why we do this podcast. Because I don't have any friends, Sam.
Yeah.
I need a friend. Oh.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No, hopefully that's not why we're doing this. We're hopefully doing this because we want to help people. I think we can. So, I'm with you on that.
I think there's, in the age of now, SEO for the last 10, 15 years has been, the greatest thing ever. And it's like the ultimate achievement to create content that achieves really good SEO for your brand. And now we're starting to see that instead of just putting a key phrase on a page 30 times, that doesn't work anymore. And the algorithms are getting smarter, and they actually are built to boost up the best and most interesting content. Because don't forget, Google, Mike, I don't know if you knew this, Google is not a nonprofit. Google is a for-profit company, and they want to make money. And so they want to treat their customers in the best way possible and deliver the best results in those search queries to their customers, the searchers. So they want to deliver the best content at the top of those search results for what people are searching for. And that used to be, this website has the key phrase that this person searched for 30 times. Let's deliver that. No longer. And it hasn't been that way for quite a while now. Yep. Now, Google and other search engines want to deliver the best possible content. Content that's interesting and that people actually want to view and read and listen to. That's why it's important.
And there's like so many opportunities for people to be kind of pushed in front of messages, right? So you think about like how many different marketing messages you experience every single day. There's kind of this overload that people have. And if it's not incredibly interesting, they're just going to tune it out, right? And so one of the ways that you actually get in front of the people you want to get in front of, yes, be in the right place, right? At the right time with the right message. Those are really critical foundational elements, but you also have to make that message actually interesting. You need to make the supporting visuals actually interesting to the people you're trying to reach. And we're going to talk about some of the ways that you can do that and have the best chance at being, that one that sticks out and that people are like, yes, that's what I need. Some of that actually is having the right message, right? It's actually identifying like what is the core problem that your audience is having that you can uniquely solve for them. And we'll talk about that. That's your story. You got to have a great story. But then you got to think about like, how do we actually make it interesting beyond that? Like, how do we maybe flip things on its head, maybe surprise people, make them laugh, make them think, right? These are ways that you can really start to take what seems like maybe a boring message, right? It's like, how many different accounting firms really just kind of are saying the same thing, maybe with a little bit of nuance. But you can start to make it more interesting by just the way in which you approach the story itself. The kinds of examples that you use, the way in which you tell the order of the story. Maybe don't start with the beginning, maybe start with the end, something like that. How you include like anecdotes and personal experiences in that. So we can talk all about that. But I think that's a really key part of this is really understanding like, well, why? Why are we doing this? It's not just to be like, funny for funny's sake, right? Or entertaining for entertaining's sake.
Yeah.
It's so that people actually that you want to reach, the people that you've identified, and we've already talked about this in a previous episode, but there are people that you want to reach, and you need to be really specific about who those people are. The more specific you can be, actually, the more interesting it's going to be.
Yeah.
But you need to reach them. You want to reach them. And your goal is to help them, right? That's ultimately the goal. You can't help them if what you're putting out in front of them just is not interesting at all.
Yeah.
If it sounds like everyone else, it looks like everyone else, it feels like everyone else, it's really not going to produce any effect for them. I was thinking through kind of some principles behind what makes things interesting. One of them is it's memorable, right? It's something that I watched or I engaged with, I read, I listened to, and I walk away and I still remember it. Well, what makes that memory stick? One of the things is that it's interesting. It made me think for a moment about it in some way, shape, or form, either because it was an idea I'd never thought about, or it was phrased in such a way that it kind of like was sticky, right? It kind of caught my attention, or it was funny, right? There was an emotional element to it in some way, shape, or form. And of course, obviously, the other part of that is you have to put that in front of people enough times. You got to keep telling that message, maybe in different interesting ways, but you got to keep telling that message over and over and over and over and over again. That's what makes it sticky, right? I think an example I love to use is the FedEx logo, right? So the FedEx logo kind of on its own, is it that interesting? I don't know. The colors, they're bright. Okay, that's cool. It's simple. So I guess that, somewhat recognizable. It's short 5-letter name. But they did this interesting thing where they created negative space between the E and the X and in the X part, the FedEx part of their name. And it's a little bit of a visual puzzle. It creates this negative space that actually has an arrow in it, right? Pointing to the right. This idea of like moving forward, stuff moving, right? It's very much tells the story of FedEx visually. And if you see that negative space, the arrow that it creates, people don't unsee it. And that actually is like a lesson in what makes something interesting is a puzzle, something that someone has to think about, kind of visually solve the puzzle or verbally solve the puzzle. That's why people remember puns as much as they don't like them. It's because it's a verbal puzzle. And once you unlock the puzzle, you actually create a memory. And it's a little bit stickier than maybe just a word or just a visual that doesn't really have any deeper interest to it. So just a little like some random ideas there. But so what are some other ways, Sam, that we can make things interesting? How do I even approach this?
Yeah, I think everything you said, Mike, was really good. And I think there's a tendency to kind of get overwhelmed with a list like that and say like, okay, now I got to like take that and got to look at my own brand here, you know, my accounting firm, my law firm, my architectural firm. And now like, how do I do that? Like, do I just sit down and start writing out like funny jokes? Do I think of like industry puns? I think there are some more foundational level things that'll actually make this more of a framework and a little bit more structured. And you want to always start, no surprise here, at the brand level, okay?
Inside out.
Inside out marketing. And start with, you know, if you've gone through a branding exercise and your firm has a clear set of values or beliefs, start there. Look at that core set of values and beliefs and try to apply that to the everyday life of your firm. How do you go about your services underneath those values? How does that differentiate you from the firm next door? Look at those beliefs. Try to like extract out how that gives your brand a different point of view on life, on the clients, what they're dealing with, their struggles, and start to talk through that lens. That'll kind of give you some instant differentiation because there's probably a lot of firms that have similar values, but not all firms are going to have the exact set of values that your firm does, especially if you've done a good job at the brand level.
Yep.
And once you've kind of done that, now you can start to sprinkle in some of that brand personality, okay? That brand personality that hopefully you've taken time to develop. From a brand level, your brand can now speak in a certain way consistently, and hopefully that makes it really interesting. Now, not every brand is going to be the jester or the jokester or the funny brand. Not every brand is going to be the caretaker, the brand that just loves and wants to cuddle you and coddle you and just make you feel safe. Not every brand is going to be, you know, like the Harley Davidson rebel, right? So you got to figure out, what is your brand? How does your brand speak? How does it talk? And let that fuel personality in the content that you're creating so that it doesn't just sound like a monotone, you know, robot talking and speaking about we do this and we do this and this is we're all about our people and we're more than just accountants, you know? Like, figure out how to say what you want to say in the unique way that your brand speaks and from the core set of beliefs that fuel everything you do.
I mean, even just the idea of like, let's say your persona is basically a robot, right? That's like your brand metaphor. Lean into that. Like,
Sure.
Make that like so extremely obvious and like so consistent across everything you do. You might actually find that becomes actually interesting, right? There's a way in which to like own almost any type of persona for the personality of your particular firm, as long as it's true, right? So, you know, it's got to line up with the culture that you have. Maybe there's particular aspects of your culture that you need to like lean into even further. And then don't try to be every type of persona. If it's like, hey, we're not the everyman. We're like kind of stuck up and we're a little bit, you know, stuffy and we're a little bit arrogant. Okay. There's a way to take that and run with it really far and really be pointed with it. And I think that's really the point, is like, whatever you believe about your industry and the work that you do, this point of view and this personality you have, they need to be really specific. And if you can run with those and stretch them as far as you think you can while they still remain true for you and your firm, you have a much better chance at like everything you create becomes that much more interesting.
Yeah.
And it's because you have a unique point of view and you have a unique persona that is very specific.
For you marketers,
I love that.
For you marketers that work for these professional firms, to Mike's point, see how far you can take it. Like, how far can you go until, you know, and you know, you got to be careful. You don't want to like ruin a brand by taking things too far. But how far can you take some of those, maybe those tropes or those those interesting little things about your firm. If you know, like, oh man, the partners at my firm are they're like the smartest people in the world, but they're just not great at the social side of things. Well, hey, maybe lean into that, because I bet a lot of your clients actually like that. Hey, my accountant, like, I don't really need to talk to him, but man, he's dynamic. Like he will get me every single little point on my tax return, all this stuff. So
I mean, I'm thinking like ad campaign right now of like, the client at like a party, right? And they're like having a great time and everybody's like joking and like having fun, playing ping pong, drinking beers, whatever. I don't know what this kind of party is. But it's a party, right? People are having a good time. And there's like Joe, the accountant, in the corner, like, I don't know, counting the peanuts out of the bowl, right? And it's like, obviously, total trope, total stereotype. Yeah. But then you show him, like, in the next scene, like, counting the peanuts on the factory floor at the client's, like, manufacturing facility or their, like, production facility. And it's like, you don't want Joe at your party. You want Joe running the numbers, right? Like, it's like, I don't know. There's a way to, like, pose that and be like, it doesn't matter. Like, we want him, like, stuffy and nerdy and maybe a little, like, in this case, probably a little dorky. Because, like, that's why you want him, right? Yeah. So anyway, there's a way to lean into that. Obviously, not every firm hopefully has that persona. I know lots of firms who think that their people are really friendly and really fun and really interesting. And it's like, great. Yeah. Find what makes that specific to your firm and really lean into it. Yeah. I think this leads us to our next point of what makes it interesting is you have to be telling a story in everything that you put out. It has to be an interesting story. It has to be a compelling story. Start with what's true, right? Tell your story as the brand. And it needs to have those pieces. I know we've covered this many times before in other episodes, in articles. We even wrote, I think it's like a whole chapter in our book about storytelling. You got to have characters, right? You got to have the right characters. You as the brand are not the hero of your story. You're actually the guide, and the client is the hero, right? So especially in professional services, I think that's pretty straightforward. Most people get that. And then you need to have an arc to your story. It's got to start somewhere. It's got to go somewhere. It's got to end somewhere. You need to tell the problem that your clients are having. You need to tell how you bring a solution to the table, and you have to have a happy ending. You got to have, like, what is that outcome for them? You got to paint that picture for them. Now, that's a pretty, like, archetypal story format with those pieces. So then you can start to think about, like, well, how could I invert this story? Maybe start with the end and go to the beginning. You think about, like, a lot of you find inspiration from TV shows, from movies, from novels. How they write stories, the process in which they tell the plot can be a really great way to, like, kind of go, oh, there's another way I could spin this. But as long as it has all those pieces, you have a story. And now it's up to you to kind of string them together in the order that you want to put. But you have to have all those pieces. And I think that's a really key piece. If you don't have a great story, like, if you're not telling the story, if you're just putting out information or little bits that don't connect to one another, then it's not interesting.
Yeah, don't communicate to the algorithm. Communicate to people, and specifically the people that you want to be communicating to. Don't forget that audience component when you're creating content, when you're creating marketing. And this can really come into play and really make your campaigns stronger. So if you have specific campaigns to specific verticals, you should know the types of people that you're speaking to and make that campaign, whatever it is. Maybe it's just a banner ad, or maybe it's a newsletter, maybe it's a podcast. Make sure that you're speaking in the ways that those people can understand and speaking to the pain points and problems that they need solved, and do it in an interesting way. The interesting part of that is it should come from your brand. So you shouldn't speak like your clients speak.
No.
Or your potential clients speak. Speak like your brand. Speak like you. But talk about the things that are interesting to those people that you're trying to reach.
Yep. Yeah, and then understanding, like, where they're coming from, right? What's the context that they're in? How do they even perceive themselves? Put them in the story, like, show them actually in the story. So when you think about, like, supporting visuals, right? Showing actual clients, showing real people, showing people that look and talk and feel like your clients when you're telling that story can be really helpful and really interesting. Obviously, using humor, using emotional appeal can be a really helpful way of like infusing your story with another layer of interest. I know we've talked about this before on another episode. This was a while ago, but like, including other types of media in your storytelling process. So, okay, write it, right? Okay, we have the written version. All right, now let's like show and tell it through visuals. Maybe use some charts and graphs and some pictures, and maybe can we animate some of those, put some motion into it, and then like ultimately like can we produce the video content that really captures all the senses. The more senses you can put into your marketing, the more opportunity you have to make it interesting. People love content that has motion, has verbal audio aspects to it, has some music, has some emotional drama built into it through those kind of attributes. And then put some motion graphics in there, tell the story. If you got a lot of data, that can be really helpful. So I love all that stuff.
Real people. And that's why case studies, testimonials are so powerful, because they are from real people, and they're from real people that are typically, like, if you're putting out a case study, you want to work with other people like the person you just helped. So for other potential clients in that industry, I remember, Mike, I think a couple years ago we were working with a bank, and they were trying to create these video testimonials or these video case studies, which were really powerful because they're showing, the farmer who's out at their farm, and they're getting up at the crack of dawn, and they're milking the cows, or they're, moving the chickens, or whatever it is. But they're talking about this kind of in an emotional way of how the bank, helped them scale up, or they helped them do this other thing. And it was really powerful, and I remember that to this day. And I don't even remember the bank's name, but we see stories like that, and I'm sure for another farmer or someone in that industry who sees that, it's just such a powerful thing that you don't really forget, especially if it's done well, and if the story is there, and you can kind of bring it back without being overly salesy, but you kind of bring it back to how your brand was the guide for that hero in the story, the person that you helped. So those things are super powerful. They're hard to create sometimes. It's hard to go out and get real people. It's a lot easier to just find a stock image of somebody and make something up. But real people are really interesting. Imagine that, Mike.
Yeah, real stories, true stories, right? It's things that have actually happened with real, businesses that you're working with. And I think even like thinking through, how do you prove that? That's part of it, is just showcasing those people, those actual businesses, and then showing the numbers behind it, the results that you had. If you've got industry expertise, like, you need to prove that through lots of data, reports, talking about what's happening in the industry. That can be a great opportunity to kind of take it beyond like a written or a static image and say, hey, let's add some motion to it. Let's maybe do it in a video format. The other part of it that I think is really important is putting real people on your side of the firm, your side of the organization, as the ambassadors in your content. So wherever you can show real people doing the work or talking about the work, showcasing the expertise, you have a much greater opportunity to really make it interesting and connective, right? That's why, even in like mass consumer brands, that's why mascots work. Mascots humanize the brand in a way that the logo can't do, right? The logo just can't do it. And even the product or the service can't be humanized. But when you put a mascot, or you put kind of a representative of the brand, and I think a lot of B2B organizations kind of like, oh, we don't do mascots. It's like, well, that might be true. You might think that's true. But in reality, B2B brands, great ones, also have mascots. A lot of times it's their CEO, right? It's an executive at the highest level who represents the brand and goes and speaks on behalf of the brand. And even their personality either becomes more of the brand's personality, or vice versa. The brand kind of infuses its personality into that person. I love to use like Apple as a great example of that. Like really the embodiment of Apple for many, many years was Steve Jobs when he was alive, leading the company. And they saw like how much detriment it was when he walked away from the firm. When he walked away from the company, kind of was forced out. He didn't really walk away for a time. And then they brought him back. And obviously you can maybe credit that to some of his ideas and his innovation. But really a lot of that came back to like they just needed a personality that people could latch onto. And Steve Jobs was that person for them. And even to this day, like, dead and gone, not there anymore, but he still represents the brand probably at a deeper level than almost anyone else has. And so like his image, his face is still kind of iconic to Apple. And you can think of other brands like that, even, like a Kentucky Fried Chicken. They brought the Colonel back. He'd been dead and gone for a long time, and they hadn't really used his image for a long time. And then eventually, like, he became the logo. You can think about like the NBA, right? What is it? Jerry West is the logo, right? There's a person in their logo. And so like you'll have to decide kind of what that means for you and your brand, but put real representatives of your firm in your content, right? Use their image, use their likeness, use them in video, use their voice and audio, and start utilizing the individual personalities to build the larger personality of your brand and make it more interesting, more connective. Really, that's what we're saying is it's more relational because people want to connect with real people. That's kind of the end story there.
There are simple things there too about even just on your website, like don't settle for stock imagery. I was looking at, what was it? I think it was maybe a law website. I think it was a lawyer's website yesterday, and I was looking at it with a client of ours, and we were trying to figure out like, is that the lawyer right there? Oh no, nope, that's a stock image. Oh, these are all stock images. And it's like that guy kind of looks the same as the other guy in the other picture. But it was like, this is all stock imagery. There's no pictures of real people that actually work at the firm. And it was just, it was a real turnoff. I'm sure like 10, 15 years ago, that website would have been like, whoa, this is really nice. This photography is like really nice and professional. But now everyone's so ingrained with what stock photography is and kind of the joke that it's become that websites like that or anything like that, that's just littered with stock imagery of people that really aren't real or have nothing to do with the firm, that you're working for. That's a detriment. So even a simple thing like, hey, spend half a day, get some good pictures of your team and start integrating those into your website and your ads, maybe your social profiles, and kind of, like you said, Mike, relationalize it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people want to connect with people. And I know a lot of firms understand that. They know that like their partners are really the ones that drive, a lot of their business development, right? Because people want to connect with them. It's why, their staff, the directory of people on their website is so critically important for so many professional services firms. It's because, at the end of the day, the client wants to actually understand who they're working with. Who are the actual people that are working with me, consulting on my business or performing services and activities on behalf of my organization. I want to see who they are. I want to understand who they are. That's why the bio is so important for every, partner in your firm. But I'd say like take that to the next level, give it more personality. So the bio is fine. Obviously, I'm sure all your partners want it to look professional and give all their accreditations and all their accolades. Okay, fine. But maybe like put some human elements into it. What makes them a person, right? Not just a professional, but what makes them a person? What makes them an individual? Talk about like some of their passions, interests, hobbies. It doesn't have to be a lot. Just a little taste of that can be really helpful for personalizing and making your content more interesting. And then take that another step further, find other formats to do that in. Maybe like a video interview for their bio can be a fun, interesting way to do that. You can do the little like on hover, like something changes with the photo, the little photo there. Just give it a little bit of interest. I don't think you have to make that silly, right? It doesn't need to be ridiculous. A lot of marketing firms tend to do that. But like, you can still create seriousness while still being personable and human. And I think the reality is what's really interesting, I think, is that as, the professionals that these professionals are working with, right? So the client like personas have changed. I think maybe 30, 40 years ago, it was expected, like everyone's going to be in a suit and tie. We don't show personality. I don't connect with people on a personal level. I don't think that's even really that true. I think we've always done that. But maybe that was the perception. The people that you're working with today more and more want that personal relationship, probably because they're not getting it in the rest of their life in our very like digitally fractured, discommunicative society that we are all jumping into here. But yeah, like bring some personality to those bios and then put your content out in a way where it's clear it's coming from an individual within the firm, right? So almost every like social post, like can you provide like a level of personality to it from someone in the firm? Again, it needs to all ladder up to the personality of the firm. But, leverage those individual personalities as well. Don't want to get too far down that road. You'll get split personality disorder within your brand. But, there's a way to layer that and really make it interesting. Again, we're talking about how to make it interesting. So that's one way to do it.
Yep.
What's another way, Sam?
Oh, we could kind of get into, headlines, taglines, slogans, that kind of thing, Mike.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can get a little cheesy, but sometimes cheesy isn't bad, Mike.
Sometimes you need to milk it.
Yeah, sometimes you got to milk the cheese, even if there's holes in it.
Oh.
I would argue, Mike, like even an eye roll is a good emotional response if it's the right kind of eye roll. If it's like the dad joke kind of eye roll, like
it could be a Gouda experience.
Yeah, it could be a really Gouda experience. Don't Swiss the topic on me, Mike. Here we go. Puns are a great way.
Yes,
great way.
Puns are fun. And they have their place. Again, like adding a level of humor into your content, adding a level of like kind of punchiness with maybe beyond buzzwords, right? So maybe find some words that are like unique to your firm.
Yeah.
Maybe some slogans and mantras that you use internally and start to infuse those into your content. They might not speak to your industry expertise, but they speak to your personality and your culture as a firm. Even like layering in like your values, your beliefs into your content, putting that in various places within, whether it's on your website or in your proposals or, in whatever other content, maybe you're producing a video. I'm a huge fan of slogans when they're done well and done right, and they're done for the right reasons, like putting together a tagline. Make that tagline actually say something interesting. The more you can make it speak to your audience and their goals and values, the more powerful that slogan's going to be, not just a descriptor of like what you do.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a time and place to be like, we're accountants and advisors, right? And that's our slogan. That's our tagline. Okay. It's not going to get me excited. It's not interesting.
Yeah.
It certainly tells me what you do, right? We get that point across really quickly. But if you want to make things interesting, you got to draw people into like, what's the final outcome that they're going to get from you? What is the value or the goal that they're chasing that you can help them achieve? And, if you think about like Nike's Just Do It campaign, that tagline says nothing about the products that Nike offers, right? It like doesn't tell me at all what industry are they in. I don't even know what they do. Doesn't even say athleticism. But what it does say is achievement. Yeah. And that's at the end of the day, everything that every Nike customer wants at some level is achievement, right? Achievement in their athletic life. It's a little more specific. And obviously, that tagline or slogan is not the entirety of all your marketing. Hopefully you have some visuals to go with it. You have some additional content. But if you really want to like hit a home run with a tagline, you got 1 second to get a point across. Get the most important point across. What is it you achieve for people?
Yeah.
Not what you do, right? But what do you achieve?
Yep.
So,
yeah, and I think you could even explore, Mike, making up some of your own words. It can kind of be a fun exercise. Take, a service of yours and then how you do it and like mesh those into your own term that you start to kind of toss around a little bit. Yeah, kind of toss around a little bit. Put it in some slideshows, start to, throw it out around the office, around the water cooler. And sometimes those things can really catch on. And then you kind of own that. You own that phrase. You kind of start owning that service. and the way that you do it, and that could become, trademarked someday, and then you've got a book on the way, and there's just so many things, Mike, that,
And that is interesting. Like, that is actually interesting. I think maybe that's not counted enough when people consider, like, what makes our marketing more interesting. Again, have that unique point of view. Do you deliver your service in a particular way? Do you have a unique point of view, a unique philosophy? Do you have a unique perspective from, like, maybe an industry expertise or a background where it's like, our founder was, a business owner in the dairy industry for 30 years and then, pivoted into accounting. Okay, well, that's interesting, right? Mm-hmm. Does that help you? Obviously, it needs to help you have a better way to deliver for your clients. Maybe you're very focused on the dairy industry, and that's really powerful. Can you put some terminology around that? Can you create maybe a new term or put a couple terms together that kind of becomes a unique point of view to what you were already saying. But I love that. I think the other thing you can do too is like lean into your location. If you're very geographically specific in where you serve, let's say we're the Boston legal firm, right? We only work with Bostonians and we're all about Boston. Own that. Like, make that a part of like every single thing you do. Maybe you'll get tired of the Shamrocks. That's fine. But and maybe there's some less cliched ways that you can tell that story. But like, own it. Like, I'd say, like, even all the way down to like, if you're the Boston firm and you don't have like a Bruins day, or you don't have a Celtics day, or you don't have a Red Sox day in your firm, I mean, maybe you have like every other day or something. I don't know. Like, maybe every day of the week is a different one. Like own that. Like, maybe you're the Boston sports firm, right? Like, we're all about Boston and the sports of Boston. Or do something where it's like, we're the, I don't know, this is super cliche, but we're like the Irish pub firm, right, out of Boston, and we just own it. But then it also like goes to like, okay, what are the partnerships you build? What are the community activities that you participate in? What do you say on your website? Like, every bio on your website better have some connection back to Boston, even if that person like isn't originally from there. I think there's so much opportunity for professional services firms. It's interesting because the location aspect of firms branding, I think, has maybe kind of been pushed to the side a little bit because it's now really easy to work with clients all over the place. I think that's actually opened up an opportunity for some firms who can really own a location, maybe a city-specific strategy, and just go all in and be like, we are the Boston restaurant firm. We love the restaurants in this city. We support the restaurateurs and the chefs and the employees and the staff and the servers and everybody who works in this industry, and we are all in on it. And it's this specific, it's this city, and it's this industry, and it's that specific, it's that tight. And obviously that needs to fit into your larger strategic plan. Maybe there's like a cap to how big that market is, but man, like, you could own that market. There's probably a way where like you're working with half the restaurants in your city, and maybe that's enough to like kind of hit those financial goals you're all aiming for. But I think that would have so much power. So I think that's another aspect, is just think about your positioning. Maybe geography is a part of your position, or should be more than maybe you thought it should be. And if it's not geographic, think about industry positioning. Think about, a unique point of view, a unique way that you deliver your service. Or maybe there's certain kinds of organizations or certain kinds of businesses, maybe not industry specific, but they're operated in a certain way. I've seen, some firms do really well when they say, like, we only work with family-owned and operated businesses, right? It doesn't really matter what industry they're in, but there's this unique way that they're managed. There's a unique way that they grow. There's a unique way that they deal with things and the problems that they encounter as a business like that. And we know that. We know that inside and out. I hope you can prove it. You need to prove that really clearly. And then be really specific about it. Don't get distracted. You might have other clients in other industries or, that don't fit your positioning. You don't need to tell their story. Just tell the story that matters to that position that you're really trying to own. And you'll find that you become very interesting very, very interesting as you
Yeah.
tell that story over and over.
Yeah. And we could get into kind of the graphical side of this too. We've talked a lot about kind of the message, but I think the graphic side, like the design side, becomes really easy when you've got a really strong message. And so the message comes first. Let the message fuel the imagery that you need to produce for whatever you're doing. And, make sure it's on brand, make sure it is interesting, but let that message kind of fuel. I know I'm a designer, Mike, you kind of have a design background. I know when there's a strong framework, a strong message to design from, designers they're just in heaven. It's just like your job becomes so easy. Your work becomes better because you've got this strong message. If somebody comes to you as a designer and says, hey, we want to create this really cool thing. We need it to go viral. Can you make something? And it's like, well, what do you want to talk about? I don't know. Just figure it out and like make it good. And it's like, oh, what? Yeah. What are you even talking about? Like that's where it becomes really difficult. So have that message first, that core message. What are you saying? Yep. And then the graphics and the imagery and the design should flow out of that. And Mike, we can kind of move on to, it's 2024, Mike, and live events are a thing in 2024.
They are a thing. They're a thing again.
They are a thing again.
Yes.
Events, there's a lot of digital events too. I mean, there's live events are coming back. Digital events are still very much a thing.
Oh, yeah.
It was kind of birthed out of the pandemic 4 years ago. Conferences, I mean, people are itching, I think, to get back out into some of these live events, industry conferences. How do you make that interesting, Mike? I'm sure, we could talk about if you're sponsoring, if you've got a booth, if you're speaking.
Yeah.
How do you make that kind of thing interesting?
Yeah, I mean, beyond the having a unique point of view, right? I mean, I think I'm just going to keep hammering that over and over. Have that unique point of view, have unique positioning. Those things make every other opportunity to get in front of people that much easier to be interesting. Right, like when you have a talk, you're presenting, and you have a unique point of view to your industry, man, that makes the conference super easy, right? But beyond that, I would think about what are ways that you can really build connection in that experience? How can you allow people to connect with you? How can you create something, opportunities, little moments, whether that's through swag, whether that's through a giveaway, whether that's through what's happening in your booth itself. But how do you actually make something that's different than what everybody else is doing? So when you're thinking about your swag, don't do pens. I mean, maybe have some pens if you really want them, but do something that no one was expecting, and then have it tie in to your larger campaign. So having something beyond just don't start with the swag, start with a campaign. What is the message we're trying to tell? What is it we're trying to achieve? Maybe you have a particular service or industry or product that you're really wanting to push, and then find swag, find interesting promo products, create an experience around that in the booth or at the conference that will really get people excited. And then think about ways that you can do that outside of the standard parameters. So for instance, we've done something at a conference every year where we host, we co-sponsor, we co-produce some podcasts, some lightning podcast episodes where we do quick 5-minute interviews of just people that are there at the conference. We just pull them in and say, hey, come talk for 5 minutes about something that is challenging you or that you're excited about in the industry, right? And that kind of breaks the mold of the standard trade show where you just stand behind the table and someone walks up and says, what do you do? People don't really want that anymore, right? So create an actual experience where you're delivering value to the attendees through whatever it is you're doing there. Or think about breaking the entire experience and being hey, we're doing we're sponsoring a after hours happy hour. It's not actually sponsored with the event, but we're handing out these little secret tickets. And if you talk to us, if you just start handing those out and people start to talk about it, it goes a little bit viral. I don't know. I hate that word. But, people at the conference are hey, are you going to that after party, that firm's putting on? That's pretty cool. And then think about how you can make that interesting. Don't do the bounce house. That's weird. But do something interesting. Do something different with it, right? Think outside the box. Think outside of what's normal. but that actually delivers value. I know I was at a conference last year. Fantastic. One of the breakout sessions was actually during lunch, and it was private invite only, and it was specifically for people who were using, I believe it was Salesforce. And this sponsor who was putting it on, it was very clear. They're like, I only want to work with people that are using Salesforce. I'm putting on this private lunch. He sponsored it. He paid for it. It was different than all the other conference experience. And then it was private, there was like 20 firms that were privately invited to come and participate in it. I was like, that is a brilliant idea. You can either do that outside of the context of the conference, or you can do that with the conference organizers and say, hey, this is part of my sponsorship. I want to create this experience. I want to be really selective with it. Selective experiences are really, really powerful. So I don't know. That's a few ideas. I'm sure there's a lot of ways that you could take that and run with it. Sam, we have like so much more we want to talk about here. I'm like looking at our outline of things we wanted to touch on, and I think we have like a whole nother episode. So what do you think about, why don't we break here and we can create something else? I mean, we can follow up and do another episode where we kind of talk more about what are some of the tactics, the tools, the process for making things interesting. I think we talked a lot about principles today, but we can talk a little bit more about in the weeds, the tactics of making things creative and interesting.
Yep. I love it. And I'll just kind of wrap everything up. I was thinking about this as you were talking about kind of the live event type of thing. Don't forget that in your marketing, you should seek to build relationships. So whether you're at a live event, whether you're creating a banner ad, whatever you're doing for your marketing, seek first to build relationships. Don't seek the sales, seek the relationships.
I love that, Sam. That is such a great summary. Thanks, everybody. I hope you check back for the next episode. If you've got any questions for us, please reach out. I would love to talk with you. Just understand what you're doing. And if you got ideas for us for these episodes, we'd love to include those. And if you've got a really unique story about how you are bringing your brand to market, I would love to hear from you. Mike@resoundcreative.com is my email. Please reach out. I would love to hear from you. Maybe you can actually come on the podcast and share that story with everybody else.
The Remarkabrand Podcast is a project of Resound and is recorded in Tempe, Arizona. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and at remarkablecast.com. If you'd like more episodes, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you prefer to get your podcasts. To contact the show, find out more about the Remarkabrand Podcast, or to join our newsletter list to make sure you never miss another episode, check out our website at remarkablecast.com. Copyright Resound Creative Media, LLC.